So this is the second part of our bond discussion. So what is a secured bond? So think of it like this. If I were to issue a bond and you were to buy it, I promise that I'm going to pay you $1,000 sometime in the future, and you are expecting me to honor this promise. And obviously, if I don't, there are consequences for me, legal consequences for me, and I may be held at default. There could be bankruptcy proceedings and so on and so forth. There could be collections and as such. But based on the issuer's credibility, the buyer may require a securitization or some sort of collateral. A secured bond or a collateralized bond may be to strengthen the credibility of the issuer. So it could be that a second person or an institution would secure a bond. It could be that some sort of collateral, a building, cash, a brokerage account, treasuries, some other bonds, stocks, shares may be provided as a collateral as part of the issue. It could be an institution like a bank that guarantees payment in case of default. It could be a second issuer that, for instance, a corporation who provides a securitization for a bond issued by a subsidiary or an affiliate. So a secured bond is collateralized with a secondary issuer or some sort of collateral. Now, what is bond seniority? Well, let's say that the institution who's issuing a bond, let me actually show this with a simple example. So let's say that we have assets of $1 billion. Right. So the idea is that we are going to have a liability by issuing a bond. So the first issue, let's say $100 million, right? Let's get rid of the decimals. What we have is remaining assets, right? So think of it like this. Once the company issues $100 million of a bond and they have $1 billion in assets, from the investor's point of view, they're thinking about collection of this liability. In case of a liquidation, obviously after the government debt, taxes, and legal fees, and so on and so forth, there comes the credit holders, and then preferred stock, and then the common stock. So as a credit holder, you have right to seize these assets in case of a default, to have your payment made to you as part of the bond that you purchased. So based on this individual issue, company has, in a way, pledged $100 million of assets, in a way, against this liability. Now, if they were to put this on as a collateral, then that $100 million would be allocated as a collateral for this liability. So while when we purchase a bond, we're thinking about how we can get our payment through assets, the company actually may spend these assets along the way while we are expecting a payment. So there is no guarantee just because a company has assets, there's no guarantee that we're going to actually be able to collect these liabilities through those assets. However, it's a fair assumption to think that the $100 million can be collected from these assets. So based on this, the company has $900 million remainder assets. Let's have a second issue, and this time let's issue a $500 million. And the assets now are still $1 billion. And now the remainder assets are only $400 million. So we're getting a little bit riskier because, as you can see, the first issue has a $100 million claim on the assets. The second issue has $500 million claim on the assets. And let's have a third issue in the amount of, say, $700 million. Now, if the company has the same amount of assets between the issues, which can be at different dates or can be all together in that sequence, however, what's going to happen is the company has no remainder of assets. In fact, about $300 million of the third issue has now have no assets to back it up. So as the purchaser of this issue, you know that almost half of the issue has no assets to collect. So the seniority in a bond refers to, in case of a bankruptcy or a default, the issuer one or the issue one holders will have priority, will have seniority when it comes to the collection of assets. And then the second one has seniority over the third, but less seniority compared to the first one. And then the third one has no seniority whatsoever, and they will simply get whatever assets left to them. Now, in this respect, after everything is paid up, all bonds are paid up, then the common holders get whatever is left over. So with respect to the seniority, issue one has the highest seniority in the credits. The second issue has the second highest, and then the third one has the third highest, and the common shareholders have no seniority whatsoever. So that's what refers to the bond seniority. So that concludes our second lecture.